to look at stewardship, and that's what we'll be looking at this morning. Interestingly enough, can't remember when it was, maybe last week actually, when we speak about healing, 9 times out of 10 our mind would go to physical healing. And I think it's a wee bit like this with stewardship, that as soon as we mention that word stewardship, if you can say it, then our mind goes to money. And hopefully today I'll try and highlight that that's not everything that stewardship encompasses, because there is a lot more to it than that is involved in it. We can't ignore that, but there's a lot more involved in it. And when I was looking at this subject this week, my mind went to that verse, very first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the and the earth and everything in it. Everything in it. And as I said, when I was thinking about stewardship, I think we first need to establish where all this stuff comes from. Where everything that we possibly can think of, everything not only actually in this world that we live, but outside this world as well, where does it all come from? And we've got the answer, I think, in the very first verse of the Bible. God created. Everything comes from the good Father, as we've been singing. But to clarify that, if we go to James 1 and 17, then we see that this actually clarifies, and it shows us that we need to believe wholeheartedly in this verse. If we are looking at Christian stewardship, then we need to look at these verses and believe them wholeheartedly. If we don't, then we are struggling. Because James 1 and 17 says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Actually, when I was reading that, don't know where I'm going with this one, but when I was reading that, that's an interesting point just at the end of that verse. With whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Everything's planned as it should be. Everything. We speak about climate change, etc., etc., etc. With him, there is no variation. No variation. Everything is as it was. Everything is as it's going to be with God. And really, if you want a text that we are taking today's sermon from, then it's Luke 16, verses 1 to 13. I'm not going to read all the section just for the sake of time. You can go over it at home. But of course, as some of us will know, this is the parable of the dishonest manager. And I'm just going to read the first 2 verses and then we'll start at continue at verse 13 through verse 10 to verse 13. So verse 1 said, he said to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him in and said to him, what's this I hear about you? Turn your account of your management. Turn in your account of your management. And then if we go down to verse 10, it says, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you to the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. I'm going to avoid the temptation, but we could speak on verse 13 for the rest of the time. You can't serve two masters. You can't have a foot, as it were, in both camps. I remember an old preacher saying that you can't sit in the fence forever, because at some point you're going to fall off. And it's a bit risky, real risky, if you're sitting in the fence and you're just hoping you're going to fall off on the right side. We need to get things sorted out here and now and stick to that side. But I'm not going to go down that road today. I just want to take this from really 3 points this morning. The idea of stewardship, I want to take it from 3 different points. First point being the environment, and then secondly, financial, and then lastly, we'll take it from our faith. So first of all, the environment, and this might be a bit strange for some of us, but that's okay. And I'm not sure how many of us has actually ever thought about being good stewards of the environment. In one sense, I think it's sad that secularism is possibly at the forefront of looking after the environment. Possibly it should be Christians, should be believers, as hopefully we'll see, who should be at the forefront of this sort of thing. But we see guys like David Attenborough and others heading up this concept of saving the environment. And by the way, I do think that David Attenborough's wildlife programs are truly amazing. I love to sit and watch them. But you might be asking at this point, what on earth is Willie going on about this morning? Well, just stay with us, and hopefully it will become clear. Because in Genesis 1:26, it says this, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of heaven and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Genesis 2:15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Psalm 24:1 and 2. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For he founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Leviticus 25:23-24. The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you are but aliens and my tenants. Throughout the country that you hold a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land. Redemption of the land. Just want to go back to the first reading in Genesis 1 and 28, where it says that you will have dominion over everything. That word, if we had to look into it, that word simply means to look after. So right at the very beginning of the Bible, what God is saying, that we are responsible for the environment. It's our job to look after the environment. As I said earlier, there is a massive thing going on at the moment about climate change. And it doesn't matter what we think about it, we live in affects the people who are part of it. Affects the people who are part of it. At the risk of contradicting myself here, but I'm going to ask a few questions. But before that, by default, really, I must admit, as some of you will know, that Sharon and myself have got an electric car. Unfortunately, it's broken at the moment. Nothing to do with the electric side of it, by the way. It is just the seatbelt, I might add, so that could happen to any car. But that being that, if I had to be honest in regards to an electric car, then to learn about it, to learn how to operate it, is it difficult? Yep. You need to suss out the apps, etc. This new way of transport, is it difficult to learn this way? Yes, it is. Especially as a self-confessed petrolhead, then it goes against everything that I ever liked. And yet, by doing that, despite the difficulties, despite having to learn, in one sense, a new way of getting around, is it worth it? Of course it is. Why would it be worth it? One reason is that we aren't using up fossil fuel, that we aren't polluting the environment, and so the list goes on. We might be quite happy, as I did for many a year, using petrol cars and actually affecting the environment through that. As I said, it was by default that we did it. But in another sense, does it save us money? Yeah. Saves us a tremendous amount of money, actually. So when we think about that, it's saving us money, then we can go on and help somebody else. We can be good stewards of our finances. Whether that's helping individuals, whether that's helping the ministry, whether that's helping missionaries, whatever it might be. Because of the money that we're saving, then we can go on. So really, in one sense, we are being good stewards of the environment. There are a lot of pros and cons for this, and I'm sure you have seen many debates. But there actually is no getting away from the fact that the Bible says that we have got dominion over the land and sea, as it were. We have got to look after the environment. So what, and this is very simplified, but what are some of the actions that a Christian might undertake to show responsible stewardship for the environment? Again, is it awkward? Yep. Is it a pain at times? Yep. Recycling. I'm not going to do it, but I wonder how many of us, if I had to ask for a show of hands, I wonder how many of us recycle. You know, one of the amazing things that the Shed Project does, and I think the folks who go to it would agree with me, is that you get stuff that's going to get chucked out, and you can make something half decent out of that by recycling. Before, it would have just gone to waste. And yet we can take it, transform it, and make it into something new. Or another way that we can be a responsible stewardship is buying or consuming less. Buying or consuming less. I remember a good few years ago, it would have been now actually, speaking on this subject when we were up the Bray. And I posed a question that if everybody, and I'm generalising possibly here, but if everybody had to look at your cupboards when you go home, and look at your fridge, and actually see the amount of food that might be in your cupboards and your fridge, and say to yourself, is it possible for me to live a week without buying anything? Is it possible for me to live off what's in the house already? And if that answer is yes, you might not like everything that you're going to make the same way as going to buy something. But if the answer is yes, then think about the week's shopping bill that you do and how you could use that just for 1 week. Unfortunately, to my embarrassment, I couldn't tell you what our shopping bill is because Sharon does the shopping. But I know for a fact, and I just look at the cupboards, I know for a fact that there is enough food in there to do me probably a fortnight, never mind a week. What could I do with that money that I have saved for a week? How could I bless somebody with that? So buying or consuming less. Another one, buying locally produced food where possible. Buying from businesses that try to protect the environment. Or another one, writing to the MP asking the government to focus on environment issues. Another way, buying greener washing machine, fridges, or white goods. And lastly, helping with clean-up events. These are all ways that we can get involved in helping to save, in one sense, helping to redeem, to use that word, the environment. But we come on to another part of stewardship, and it is financial. I might add this, but when we look at giving, I made a promise to myself that I would only speak about it once a year. And that is for the simple reason that I listen to people and all you hear is give, give, give. And I don't think that's correct. But I always address the financial side of things once a year. And I think I've managed to stick by that. So where really does this idea of our finances leave us in terms of stewardship of our possessions and giving? 1 Timothy 6:17 to 21. As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. We've to set our hopes on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are there to do good, to be enriched in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasures for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. And I love this wee bit at the end here. It says, O Timothy, guard the deposit entrusted to you. Avoid the irreverent babble and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge, for by professing it some have swerved from the faith. I love that wee bit. O Timothy, guard the deposit entrusted to you. When I was thinking about this passage and I read that section, as for the rich in this present age, it really took me back a wee bit, if I be honest. It set me back my heels a wee bit, if I be quite honest. Because I suddenly thought to myself, how on earth are you going to interpret this one? This is a tricky one because not everybody's rich. But my mind went to a time when Victoria, I think it was at high school. And really, when we think about it in this sense, to be rich is relative. Because we were hosting a girl from Tanzania. The high school has got an exchange program where children from the UK, from Buckeye High, save up money and raise money so that they can go to Tanzania, but after that they provide the finances, etc., to bring some of the Tanzanians over to the UK for a holiday, and Victoria was involved in that. And we were fortunate enough to host a girl from Tanzania. And we're probably halfway through the week. And Victoria came to me and she says that the girl said that our family must be very, very rich. And that kind of took me by surprise, because in my mind, we're not very, very rich. And Victoria said to girl, "Why do you say that?" And I thought her response was absolutely brilliant, because she said, "Your dad's fat." Your dad's fat. You see, in her country, if you're fat, must mean you're rich, because you can buy the food and you can spoil yourself. Nothing to do really with how much you've got in the bank. It's how much you've got in your waist, really. So being rich is really relative. In that young girl's eyes, we were really, really rich. We were really, really well off. She is correct, because as I say, in her country that is a sign of wealth. So really, in these parts of the world, as I said, then people would see us as being, people like me who's maybe a wee bit overweight, as being rich. So really, when we think about that in terms of the rich of this present age, then we can see how that actually fits in. But when I was reading that passage, those of us who are rich, and again it's come back to that point, I think, about seeing how much we've got in the fridge or in the cupboards. There are three things in this passage that we've got to do. He said we are to be good stewards, if you like, with our possessions. We live, and this does pain me in one sense, but we live very much nowadays in a throwaway society. When, if it doesn't work, chuck it. Don't bother even trying to get it fixed. Just throw it in the dump. But we have to be good, we have to look after the best we can with our possessions. But the other thing that we've got to do is we have to be generous and be ready to share. Those folks who might be struggling financially or otherwise, we've just to help them along as good stewards. And the other one, and again, this played with my mind a wee bit, if I be honest, because it says we've to store up for ourselves as a good foundation. And again, when we actually think about that, we've not to frit our stuff away. We've to guard it. We've to look after it. And if somebody is in need, then we've to give. What is it? It says in Acts, is it Acts chapter 2? When there was that mass amount of people who became Christians. What is it? It says that they did. They went about selling their possessions and helping those who were in need. And if we store it up, if we look after it, then we can actually do that. And of course, I think as well, there is a connection there, storing up our treasures in heaven. I like what one commentary says. It says it's saving our money so we can make money to be able to do good. Saving our money to make money so that we can give the money that we make away and do good. Not saving the money for ourselves and squandering it on ourselves, but actually giving it away. And then actually the whole concept within stewardship and within financial stewardship, we need to think about giving. And as I said and I highlighted, he goes on to say, Timothy, make sure you look after what has been given to you. I read this, and if I be honest, it was a surprise to me. I read it in one commentary. But the concept of tithing, giving 10% of what we have, is actually an Old Testament thing. The Old Testament law required multiple tithes. One for the Levites, one for the use of the temple, and others for the feasts. And then, of course, there was another tithe for the poor of the land, which actually, if we add all that up, would have totaled around 23.3% opposed to 10. Some understanding is that the Old Testament tithe is a method of taxation to provide for the needs of the priests and Levites in the sacrificial system. But as we know, Christ came to abolish the law. And nowhere in the New Testament does it command or even recommend that Christians submit to a legalistic tithe system. Nowhere in the New Testament does it command or even recommend that Christians submit to a legalistic tithe system. The New Testament nowhere designates a percentage of income a person should set aside, but only says gifts should be in keeping with income. I want to go back to our first reading, that God created everything. So the money that we get, the money that we manage to accumulate, realistically is not ours, but it's our Father's getting it. And then I looked at 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 7. And again, I think, to be honest with you, this is a revelation. For me, anyway. Because it says there, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Each one must give as he or she has decided in his heart. You see, again, I think we've got this concept of giving all wrong. And I don't mean this church here. I mean the church worldwide. The church as a whole. Because in one sense, when we think about it, we get saved, We get baptized, we do a membership class, we join the church, and then we pay something like a subscription fee as part of our membership. When we do this, then we expect the benefits that come from being a member. Why? Because we've paid our dues every week. As I say, that might be a bit harsh. Is that what happens? We get saved, we get baptized, we do some membership classes, we join a church, we pay a subscription fee, and then we expect the benefits of paying that fee. The parable that sometimes is used when thinking about giving is the widow's mite. And to be perfectly honest, I think that lady, the widow, gave what she felt in her heart. She felt that was the amount that she should give that day. And I think, really, when we think about it in this sense, about giving what's in your heart, we're going back to the thing that we thought about in regards to love. Christ gave us everything, and a lot more. A lot more. A lot more. So why shouldn't we give back to him? MacArthur says this: while it's possible to give without loving, it is not possible to love without giving. And I think there is a lot of truth in what MacArthur says. While it is possible to give without loving, it is not possible to love without giving. You see, if we love, just ask Sharon, if we love somebody, then we just want to pour out everything upon them. Don't ask Sharon. But it's that idea, isn't it? It's that idea. If we love somebody, we just want the best for them. If we say we love the Lord more than surfing, but we spend all our money on the surfboards and do not give as we should to the Lord's work, then the way we spend our money shows the purpose of our heart more accurately. Jesus said, didn't he? For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And again, if we go back to the verse that we looked at, it says we've not to give reluctantly or under compulsion. And as you know, compulsion means to be forced to do something. No, we've not to be forced to do something. We've to give what we've decided to give in our heart. They gave as they decided in their heart. And we've not, I've heard it. Sadly, I've heard it. But Hubert only gave X amount this week. That's dodgy. That's dodgy stuff. Because maybe Hubert hadn't a lot that week. And he gave what he could in his heart. We don't judge what people are giving. In some churches, actually, I know that they'd say the plate or the box or whatever it is, the offering box or whatever is there, If you want to give, give. If you want to take, take. I wonder how we would stand with that. It's not mine. It's not even the church's. It's God's. So if you want to give, give. If you need something, take it. Because we believe that the Lord will provide. The believers in Macedonia who were poor amazed Paul by the amount they gave for the needy saints in Jerusalem, 2 Corinthians 8. And they did it because they wanted to. They actually begged Paul to allow them a chance to give. The apostle told the Corinthian Christians that if they followed the example of the Macedonians, a circle of blessing would result. The givers would be blessed, the people receiving a gift would be blessed, God would be praised, and the receivers would start praying for the givers. You see how it goes round. You see how it goes around. And then we come to our final point, which will be brief for the sake of time. And again, I'm not sure if you've actually ever thought about this, but being good stewards of our faith, being good stewards of our faith. Acts 20 and 32 says this, "And now I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you the inheritance among all those who are sanctified." And it's the clue there, I think, really is inheritance. We have been given an inheritance. Another version says this, "Now, brothers, I entrust you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up, and to give you the inheritance among all those who are sanctified." This word entrust means to have responsibility. It could say, I have given you the responsibility to the word of grace, which is able to build you up. I have given you the responsibility of your inheritance, and to those who are sanctified. I'm not sure if there's anybody here today or listening online that would allow our own home to be defiled, to let somebody come in and wreck our own home. I'm sure we would guard it as much as we possibly can. Or if our parents had some inheritance that they passed on to us, then would we fritter that away? Would we allow it to go to the dogs, or would we look after it? I'm sure everybody would say that we would do our best to look after it. We certainly wouldn't allow anyone to steal it away from us. In other words, we would be good stewards of our home. We would be good stewards of that inheritance which has been given to us. Galatians 2 and 7. On the contrary, when they saw that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had entrusted the gospel with you to the circumcised. So we've been entrusted with the faith But we've also been entrusted with the gospel that we got saved from. Just a couple of points for us to think about. Not only, firstly, have we to guard our salvation, but we need, especially in the days in which we live, we need also to guard the gospel. One of the guys I like to listen to online is Carter Conlon for Times Square Church. And I was listening to his testimony. And before he was saved, a nun said to him, God has got a special purpose for your life. He got saved, and one of the first persons that he told that he became a Christian was the nun, who by this time was in a care home. And this was her words. She said to him, make sure you go to church and don't let what God has given to you slip through your fingers. Make sure you go to church and don't let what God has given you, i.e. your faith, don't let that slip through your fingers. You see, we need to guard our salvation. We need to look after our faith. Another story, and I don't think we've to guard it, but actually we've got to make it grow as well. We need to invest in our salvation, as it were. Sanctification. And another story that I thought was really sad. I remember hearing a chap at the door, and I went to answer the door, and sure enough there was two people standing. Two Jehovah's Witnesses. And I stood and chatted to them for a while. And one of the ladies turned to me, and she had explained something that had happened a good few years ago. You see, she was a Christian. She was a Christian. And she went to a Baptist church and was involved in a Baptist church. I don't know where this was, but something happened, and she ended up seeking answers in the Jehovah's Witnesses' faith. And eventually she became a Jehovah's Witness herself. You see, she had been robbed of her salvation. Her salvation, if you like, her faith had been taken from her. What does it say in John 10:10? The thief, that is Satan, comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have came that you may have life and have it abundantly. Never let our faith be frittered away. Never let our faith be stolen. We should always invest in it. And never let the gospel be taken away. Never let it be tainted. Never let it be frittered away until actually it's non-recognizable to the faith that we believe in the book. Always guard our faith. Always guard our salvation.